Hello everyone, Danny here from the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, welcoming you to today's webinar, Emergency Preparedness. Summer in Australia is of course always a threatening time regarding disasters and emergencies. So in preparation, the CBAA in conjunction with our good friends at the Community Media Training Organisation have put together this session to provide a bit of practical advice on emergency broadcasting and also show you the gateway to further resources that will hopefully assist in making sure that you can best serve your communities there in regards to emergency broadcasting. Before we get started, today's session is being broadcast to you from Gadigal land, and as such we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which we meet, that of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging, acknowledging that sovereignty was never ceded. Today's session is going to be brought to you by Martin Corben, a media professional with very diverse experience, including radio, web, video, audio and social media. He's worked for ABC North Coast, 702 ABC Sydney as a multimedia reporter, on-air presenter and content director. He's worked for our good friends there at the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. Thanks to AFTRS for their support of our recent CBAA conference. Martin has done all that and more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor to him. Before I do so, you see people there getting busy in the chat box. Please feel free to put your questions there. You can also use the Q&A function. For those of you joining us via Facebook, please feel free to put something in the comments there on Facebook if you have any questions for Martin. I'll just stop sharing. Martin, you can grab the screen whenever you're ready, and you can feel free to get on the camera and say good day to people should you feel so inclined.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, I will do that just for the moment. I hope you can see me. And greetings from Bundjalung country. I should say Jingyiwala, which is how you say hello in Bundjalung country, which is northeast New South Wales. And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging as well. And nice to join you all for today. I'm going to turn the video screen off shortly, but I really want to thank you, Danny, for the intro there and talk a little bit about what we're going to do today in terms of emergency broadcasting. It's a little bit of background and a little bit of hopefully inspiration to take up some opportunities that have been presented by both CBAA and the CMTO as well. So that's the course of today. I'll try and share my screen now and see if this all works, and we might get underway. If I can pick on this one and start to show from the beginning. Yeah, so here we are, emergency broadcasting, which is really flavour of the month, and hopefully we won't need to use it too much, but it is one thing that we've been talking about a lot for some time, and even more so maybe in the last 12 months or so. So a couple of things I want to do today in the hour that we've got is obviously take some questions later on, but I do want to give a bit of a context for emergencies for community radio. What does it mean for community radio? What do emergencies mean, and how can you fit into whatever's going on, if indeed we want to fit in? I also want to quickly look at what response there has been in the past, and then from that, what sort of training opportunities are now available through CMTO and CBAA. I want to run through some examples of some of the course notes and opportunities there are, some learning opportunities for you and your station and others in your community. I don't know whether we can go into too much detail today because there's a lot around. I just want to give you some examples of what is available and the sorts of things you might be able to learn and take back to your teams from today, but also lead on from today and go and explore further with both your teams and yourself. Danny mentioned the CBAA's new online platform, expecting to be released very, very soon. I think it's even going to be launched today, and at the end of this, we'll have the link available for you to go and explore what is available on that new CBAA learning platform, which is an online course. More about that in a second. I'm teasing you ahead. And really, I guess, for me, it's about trying to inspire you and your team to make a plan. And really, I don't know what that plan is. Community radio is a diverse group of broadcasters and individuals and communities right across the country in lots of different situations, whether you're right in the city or whether you're out in the bush somewhere or in an Indigenous community. They're all different situations. But I think what's important is we all strive to be better. And when it comes to emergency broadcasting, making a plan is the first step in trying to be better. So that's the plan for the next 40 minutes or so. I want to give that brief context to where we were. In fact, 12 months ago, almost to the day, I took this screenshot. Hopefully you can see it, the screenshot of off my phone of the fires in my area app. The red fires there are emergency fires. They're the ones where we ask people to evacuate, take emergency action, invoke your fire plan. Sometimes it even means, look, you're on your own because we can't get firefighters to you. This is 12 months ago today. For some people, it seems like a long time ago, but you know what? It's actually not that long ago. It was a pretty scary situation, and it went on from June till May. So in our area, but also in southeast New South Wales, it went on for nearly 12 months of emergency conditions and the repercussions of emergency conditions. And you're sure we might say that that's just one event, but it was a pretty big event too. We look at the deaths, 34 people died, 417 deaths through things like smoke inhalation, which was a big thing even in large centres like Wollongong, Sydney, and so on. The causes has been a big cause of debate, and I'm sure you're aware of the discussions about global warming and whether it was the Indian Ocean dipole or whether it's man-made global warming. The answer doesn't really matter right now, but the fact that it was being debated in our Australia-wide was important. 18 million hectares of land burnt. We know that there were billions of animals lost, and buildings, 3,500 homes is the one that gets me. 3,500 homes. So that was just last year. And I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just saying that this was a fact of last year. And to give us in that context, that wasn't all that was happening at that time. If you recall, in New South Wales, and I live in New South Wales, hence the New South Wales reference, this is the drought map from 2016 to August 2019. And the dark brown represents the drought areas that hadn't received rain for 24 months or well below average rain for 24 months. It's basically all of New South Wales. And it was pretty dire. In fact, it was made international news. So emergencies aren't always, fire and flood. They are things that linger on, and drought is particularly one of those things that linger on. The photo, I guarantee that is not the best photo I've ever presented in a webinar, but that is supposed to be a photo of a flood. Because what happened after the drought, you may recall in some areas, was a flood straight after a drought, which was devastating for many. Not only just the loss of topsoil and the other impacts infecting other parts of the community, but the irony of it, we get some beautiful rain and then it turns to flood. So this is the sort of stuff that's going on in the last 12 months alone. So I guess I started this little journey with community broadcasting and emergencies. I thought, well, what's the appropriate response to emergencies in a local area for community media? And I guess that's a question that community stations have asked themselves over the time. Go back to that earlier slide I showed you from my screenshot of the fires in my area, with the numbers of emergencies and fires burning down on villages and hamlets and small towns in my area. I actually rang one of the community local radio stations and made contact with them. In fact, I made contact, I didn't ring. I was on Facebook with them. And I guess I was offering some support, possible advice if they needed it, or direction if they needed some assistance in what was a pretty dire situation. And my question to them at the time was, what are you planning for your emergency coverage? And I was sort of expecting a range of different responses to that. We're on to this, or we've invoked our plan, or we've thought about some other things to do. And the response I got wasn't really what I was after. And I guess it shocked me, to be perfectly frank, it shocked me a little bit to get the response that no, they weren't going to do any emergency broadcasting. We'll just keep on playing great music, and plenty of it. Now, for myself, I find that a little bit disturbing and not really the response I was after, because my view about community radio is about local community. If something's going on in your community, you're trying to reflect it and talk about it and reflect it back to your community. But to keep playing great music, which not necessarily local music and not necessarily the best of the 70s, that's not really going to fill the brief, is it? But to find out that people are just ignoring something that's basically on their doorstep, where people could be killed, there could be house losses, there could be property damage and so on, I found that pretty extraordinary. It's not the total response. That was just one response. And I think it was one that spurred me on to think more closely about what community radio's response could be and should be to emergencies. Okay, so it sort of draws us on then to look at where is community radio in terms of its preparedness anyway for responding to emergencies should they occur. So during those bushfires that we had, there was more than 80 stations, we know, at any one time were broadcasting, which is a terrific response. People being involved in community radio stations and doing emergency broadcasting, which is terrific. Some stations, they've already been down this path before, from the Black Saturday bushfires in Victoria some years ago, and others in the past have even gone down this official line of having official status as emergency broadcasters. They've got signed agreements that they will broadcast during emergencies. They will react to the Rural Fire Service or the SES ringing them saying, can you broadcast this? They will interrupt programs. So some have gone really into it because they know how important emergency broadcasting is for their area. Other community radio stations suffered damage to their transmitters. And we know this too, that many of the volunteers involved in some community broadcasting have been traumatized by the experience. We often talk about the people who've lost their homes and been affected by bushfires, or maybe lost stock, or otherwise been affected. But actually reporting on things that you know about and communities that you know about, care about, even know the people, that can be quite traumatizing as well. So we know that that's something in community radio also. Are we prepared for that, I guess, is the follow-up question. And I don't know how often you've heard this response, but if you ask someone, did you do any community broadcasting during the emergency? I often hear this comment, yes, we did a great job. We were in for 2 weeks straight, but there were only 3 of us actually doing it. Now, I just mentioned traumatizing just a few minutes ago, but to be on air with just 3 of you trying to supply that information for 2 weeks straight in an emergency situation doesn't seem sustainable, and doesn't seem like it's a planned operation, that there's been some forethought going into it. So I guess there's good bits about this, that lots of stations do have some sort of plan. And we haven't surveyed who's actually got the plans and who hasn't, but I guess it's a time and opportunity to look at where we are in terms of preparedness as a station. And that's where we are today, and having some useful resources to look at to try and make sure we're better prepared for the next plan, or the next event, I should say. So how has the industry responded? And with CMTO, let's go through them first, because they've developed this one-day in-station management style course. We say management style, it's a course for broadcasters in the station to come together and work through with a CMTO trainer some of the opportunities, some of the difficulties, some of the benefits, and some of the skills required to go into emergency broadcasting. But you come together as a group. You can't make a big decision that day, of course, because it's got to be a board decision and maybe a programming committee decision or management decision about what you do about emergency broadcasting. But at least it starts that discussion in station around the table, which has been great, because we have a lot of resources and reading materials that people can follow up afterwards, but it really just starts that discussion. We've delivered this course as a pilot at 2 Bob FM, which I love to mention is the station I started out at 400 million years ago, at 2 Bob as a volunteer, Taree in New South Wales, and they were impacted by fires last year, and they thought that they'd be a great place to start out in having a get-together and sort of what do we need to do if this was to happen again. So we delivered the pilot there and got some great feedback. One of the special features of the course that CMTO has offered now, if you don't mind me saying, is the fact that part of the course is asking a local emergency representative to attend, to actually come into the building, come in and meet the team, not for a full, couple of hours. It's just for a short session, because I think it's about just cracking the ice on the relationship if there isn't one already. But not only that, it's about understanding what the emergency services provide, but also looking at how we can work in with them as community broadcasters. If you've heard me talk about this before, maybe you've heard me say that the last thing you want to be doing during an emergency is to be ringing up your local emergency, RFS or SES or Country Fire Service and introducing yourself, which I know has happened a lot. That's not the time to be introducing yourself and asking, what can we do? Or we want an interview with you. That's not the time, because they're already under the pump. So the time to do that is in the downtime and to have a plan. So having this little feature in the CMTO course, I think works really well. It was an eye-opener for many of the team at 2Bob to sort of meet face-to-face someone and to see and hear exactly what they need for us, and to really also hear that they value community radio's opportunity to talk about hyper-local instances in emergencies, to really narrow it down. We might think that other networks have got it covered, and they do great jobs too, but there's opportunity for community radio to be involved should it wish to be, but there are ways about going about it. The feedback from that course and from the emergency services was that it was really, great outcomes, positive. The trainer, Martin, he was brilliant. I joke, of course. It was a great course, though, and went down really well. So we just, CMTO, I'll talk about more in just what they've got to offer in terms of that shortly. So the CBAA is also on the idea that emergency broadcasting is an important consideration. And without speaking for either organisation, I just am a contractor to both, but without speaking for them, what I can say is the CBAA has now developed this online training package, series of 5 modules that I'll show you shortly, but 5 modules where you, in your own home or at your station, can go through the modules of what we think are the 5 key areas. And you're not going to be an emergency broadcaster, full stop at the end of either of these training opportunities. What you are going to be is more aware of what you need to do as an individual and as a team to go further, to better, help your community next time there might be an emergency. So we've developed the online training, 5 modules. Like I said, accessible in your own time. It's information rich. There's plenty of resources, downloads, activities, quizzes, a whole bunch of things in the course on offer. And the special features, I think, if I had to pick out one from the CBAA's offering, is that there's comments from emergency services. So we've roped in some people around the country who are experts and have recent experience to give us the emergency services response. What do they need from us? What can we do for them? How should we do that? How do we contact you? How do you give us the information? Those sorts of things. But also, I think more importantly, I mentioned traumatizing and the stress that emergency broadcasting may bring to community broadcasters. Is we're planning to speak to the DART Centre. Now, the DART Centre is a centre that looks into trauma for journalists and reporters and media generally when it comes to stress and trauma in their workplace, like covering wars and those sorts of things. But they also look into the stress and trauma that might come with covering events or broadcasting events like emergencies. They do work all around the world, but we've got some commentary coming from the DART Centre as part of the course as well. The DART Centre spokesman, Kate McMahon, spoke at the recent conference. So you may be aware of some of the opportunities that they have. And also the target for this session of the online course is for both station management and broadcasters. It's a little bit hard to explain just to tell you, but there's sort of a broadcaster like yourself can go through the whole course of all 5 modules, but there are bits that the station management has to think about, like, well, what sort of plan should we make? Where should we, when should we do things? And there's bits for broadcasters as well, like how do I actually make up an emergency announcement? So we tried to make that practical as well as a little bit of theory, but base it on experience of broadcasters as well. So there's quite a few videos from broadcasters who've got real experience, and they're not, they're broadcasters with experience. They're community broadcasters, just like you may be. Okay, I'm just going to. So what are the desired outcomes of both these courses? And I guess it's not just about the courses. I guess if it were me thinking about what the community sector wants in terms of desired outcomes, it's just more knowledge of emergencies, the organisations that are involved, and the roles that each one has, because it's a system. And I guess what I've found talking to community broadcasters is many weren't really unaware that there's this whole planning thing that goes on, beyond any community member, that there's a whole plan for emergencies in just about every community of Australia. Like, if X happens, we'll do this. And that's an ongoing thing. And until you dip your toe into that, you really don't know that these whole systems actually exist. So we want the outcome to be that people will know, oh, there is a lot of information, there's a lot of organisation, and this is what that person does when it comes to their role in an emergency, so that when you are a broadcaster, you know who to contact. I guess the desired outcome across the whole community sector was to develop the skills and the confidence, I should have in there, the confidence to be able to find the right information to construct and present the messages. So to find it first, but then to really present it to an audience so that it's meaningful and that you get people to do what they're supposed to do. And that could be, leave your house now, or it could be just prepare your home and clear your gutters. It sort of doesn't matter, but are we packaging up the material and presenting to people in the right timeliness, like when they need it? And also, is it effective? Do they do what we are suggesting that they do? And it's not us suggesting it, it's the official sources of information suggesting. I guess we wanted to have the outcome of making some decisions, because in talking to a lot of stations, lots of thinking, well, we have to be an emergency broadcaster. Well, in fact, my humble view is you don't have to be an emergency broadcaster, but you have to have a plan for whatever it is. Because if you're a small town broadcaster, and you don't think you have the capability and the capacity to be able to do emergency broadcasting, and there's an emergency on, you should be directing people to services where they can find that information. I don't know. To me, that seems logical. You might lose a few listeners, during that, hour or day or week, but isn't it about safety of the community you're trying to serve first? But if you want to do emergency broadcasting, then you have to know your capability. What can we actually achieve? What have we got? What resources do we have? How long can we keep going for? Are we just 3 people going for 2 weeks straight? Or are we going to have teams of 3 going for 2 weeks straight on 4-hour shifts? That's really a decision that has to be made locally. Meeting organisation and community expectations. Now, I guess meeting organisation, by that I mean your station. What is your station trying to do? And what's its obligation to the local community? And what does a community expect of its community radio station? Let's go back to that question I asked a community radio station some time ago, like, what are you going to be doing? If they're just going to be playing music, I don't know, is that what the community or your community expects? Just music during an emergency? I mean, I can't speak for your community, but I sort of get the feeling that's not really the right response that communities are after. And I know there's a concentration now within the sector, and which is really great. There's more emphasis on localism and being hyper-local. I know the CMTO has just kicked off a campaign for community journalism. A really vibrant group of people are now trying to, develop and dig up stories from their local area. I think that's what our community sort of expects. And they maybe expect things about emergency broadcasting before, during, and after emergency broadcasting. Maybe that's part of the expectation. These are some of the decisions that individuals and broadcast stations need to have a think about. Okay, a bit more about that. This is from the CBAA's own survey results. I just happen to have it. Why people listen to our radio stations, why are they listening in the first place, for local news and information, and for local voices and personalities. Local news, if it's going on in the area, I guess people want to know about it. And for local voices and personalities, in an emergency, having someone who you're used to telling you to do something is much more powerful than having someone who's from another city, another state, or just a new voice telling you that you should do something. And even that goes further, like getting the pronunciations of roads wrong can not only be annoying, it's also a bit dangerous too. So those sorts of things are really powerful when it comes to your own listeners already thinking about what's the community radio station there for. I guess many will think that emergency broadcasting offers an opportunity for us to be better, to knit in with the needs of our community. And to do that, we've got to do it well. We've got to supply, and I guess we've got to fulfill the promise. If we're going to do it, we've got to do it well. Whatever we're going to do, we have to do it well. So in the courses that we've developed through both CMTO and CBAA, it might sound a little confusing to have two courses, but they really should work in well together. And I'll come to that in just a little moment more. So we've included in both courses, what are the responsibilities of being an emergency broadcaster? Some signing memoranda of understanding, others simply saying that we want to be a republisher of warning information, and others are thinking, you know what, we're not built for this. We're just coming to do the jazz show, man. That's it. We don't need to do any emergency broadcasting, or we're not anticipating any emergencies near us. That's okay if you've got a plan, but you need a plan and you need to know what the responsibilities are. We also asked groups and individuals at both courses to look at what the risks are in your area, and just to go through a risk profile sort of study. Like, is your area known for flooding? Is it known for bushfires, or is it in a coastal area for tsunami? Cyclones is an obvious one. What are the risks to our community? And so we ask you to go through and actually nominate those. Obviously, in the CMTO course, the group can discuss that together. On the CBAA online course, we have to do a risk profile, and you can download that and take it to the station, go through the risk profile for your area. Okay, yeah, we are a bit of a flooding area, but most of our floods are minor. What sort of warnings and notices should we put out about that? Emergency organisations and how they work. Lots of people don't seem to know that they sort of know that they exist, but not how they operate and how they're structured and what their roles are. So we talk about who's in charge of an emergency when it happens. And that's, I think, important, knowing who's the go-to place for information during one, how to access the information, and really what sort of information do you need. Keep in mind that the emergency services are emergency services, and they're fantastic, but they're not really broadcasters. So sometimes we need slightly different information or extra information than the emergency services will provide. So we need to know where to find that, and we go through ways of how to actually dig that up, how to verify it, how to use it, how to construct an emergency message. And that's the next point, is how to prepare and how to present information, like the emergency messages. And I've got the stars there because I want to show you some detail about how we do that during the courses. We want to look at what resources your team needs, and we look at both the physical resources, and that's not just people and having the volunteers on offer. It could be a time when you actually draw in other volunteers, depending on the emergency, people to help answer phones, not go on air. You know, those people that love being involved in community radio but never want to go behind the mic? Well, maybe there's a role for them in the office that day to be making calls and collating information. So there's a possibility for a look at your resources in the physical sense. But by that, we also mean, wow, what's our plan B if the power goes out and we lose our transmitter? Do we have a diesel generator? Do we need one? Do we have communications if the phones go out? What do we do if the flood water's rising and we're in a flood area? How do we manage our broadcasts? Do we have the OB kit ready to go? Can we switch it on from remote? All those sorts of things. And I guess everyone's had a go at those plan B scenarios during COVID, but I guess we're talking about intense situations that can happen fairly quickly when it comes to an emergency. And we're also looking at what resources does your team need in terms of the skills, in terms of being able to put together constructive, actionable messages for emergency broadcasters. So these are the things that are included in both the courses. And then this is the really important one, looking after your team. I've mentioned before about the possibilities of trauma when it comes to being involved in these things. And I've got to tell you, from personal experience of doing lots of emergency broadcasting, it's exhilarating as well. I don't want to paint a negative aspect to it. It's exhilarating. It's high energy. You pour everything into it. It's really great stuff. but you know what? It can impact upon you as a person and the team as well. Particularly if we get drill down to when we're reporting on things that we know a lot about and people we may know even being affected. It might sound trite to say it now, but you know, a flood doesn't seem like much, but when you know the houses that are being flooded and the trauma that comes with it, then it can affect you on air and even what you're doing. So, long story short, we've got information and assistance and ways of dealing with looking after your team, both the psychological impacts on broadcaster stations and the communities. And we know that there's a lot of emphasis on the communities now, their recovery, which is something else that the community could be involved in. Okay, I borrowed this from Michaela's brilliant recent webinar from the CMTO course about how to make an effective announcement. And this is some of the little bit of detail I want to run through that's included in the course. So we've given some examples here about how to make an effective emergency announcement, including the effective message looking into the type of threat, who's issuing the information, whether it's the RFS or the SES. That gives it some weight and some believability. It's not just, oh, we saw this thing on Facebook, you know, you should evacuate now. Specifically mentioning the area that's affected. So we're really great at this because we know our area very well. The action required to move to higher ground or whatever. So will our message make people do this to move to higher ground? We hope so. And delivering this message, we go through the fact that the last thing you want in an emergency is someone, you know, running from one end of the building to the other, coming on air going, oh yeah, everybody's got to get out. That doesn't induce calm and it's not helpful to people. So we look at how to present that with authority, but also in a calm way and a helpful way. Also the language, using it clear and simple so people actually do what we suggest that they be doing. When do we start broadcasting? When do we put them in each hour? And how long do we go for? When do we stop them? Consider the question, if you start in one program doing emergency broadcasting and stop in the next, listeners across two programs will think that the emergency is over. They don't need to think or do anything about it. So it's important that be a station decision and station managed. And then the frequency of how often every hour do we need to be making broadcasts. So there's some practical takeaways that we use in both the courses of how to construct these and then deliver them and to make sure that they serve our community well. Okay, so we've talked a lot about opportunities during emergencies, but you know what? There's a lot of opportunities before, during, and after. And even before emergencies start or even thought of. I mean, I don't know about your station, but whether you thought about doing a bushfire preparedness link up with the local rural fire service. I know in Queensland sometimes there's a very close connection with cyclone season, which started on November the 1, where they'll do an awareness campaign. But there's opportunities for us to be doing some of this stuff. And here's just some in terms of local content. A personal opinion, local content is the thing we need to be driving at in community radio. More local content. I'm not talking about music, I'm talking about talk content. And that leads to interviews, whether it's documentaries, discussions, debates, recovery stories that can come after the event, how people are getting on with it. We can do a great role there. Playing back old historical things or keeping things for an archive, and local content in terms of promotional campaigns. Working with the RFS or the SES or whoever it is, we might get some new members out of that. We might get some new opportunities to engage with them, but there's opportunities there before and after an event. In terms of local engagement, I can see opportunities for people to be involved in events and promotions, like an OB at the Rural Fire Service to get everyone prepared, or even competition for best house preparation or something along those lines. You can coordinate with the local emergency services. It even gives you an opportunity to call out for specialist volunteers, as I mentioned earlier, whether that's in the office or technical or whatever other roles there might be. Maybe opportunities for fundraising, probably others. I mean, they're just really off the top of my head to think about what opportunities emergencies do provide. I want to just give, if I can, a preview of the CBAA online course because it's being launched today. I've just got a few minutes left to give you a quick overview. Hopefully it won't be too sticky. I'm just going to stop sharing now if I can. Can I just go to here? No. Share screen.
Do you want me to see if I can share it from my screen, Martin?
That'd be great. Yeah, just the front page with the 5 modules, if you could. That'd be fantastic.
And it's learning.cbaa.org.au, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bear with me 1 second, everyone. Thank you very much for this. Okay, share screen. Sorry about this, everyone. Thank you very much for your patience. There, you seeing that now?
Yeah.
Great. I'll just scroll down.
You just scroll down for a bit. You see that there's 5. You can't see. There's emergency. There's 5 complete modules. And if we just go back up to the top there, Danny, if you wouldn't mind. Well, just down a little bit. So I just want to see the 3 modules across the top. That's it. Fantastic. Thanks for the coordinated effort. What the plan is for CBAA is to roll this out over 5 weeks. There are 5 modules. The first one is up and running. And as Danny mentioned earlier, the link will be going out to all the participants today. And you might want to share that amongst your station and go in and have a look. I want to say at the outset, there's a few things that say, you know, do you want to pay for the course? I'm pretty sure it's all free, so don't worry about that so much. But have a look at the emergency broadcasting number 1. If you could click on that, Danny, I don't know whether you've been through the course or not.
The emergency broadcasting number 1, are you prepared?
Yes.
I have had a bit of a go.
Wonderful.
There we go. It's saying resume course. What I'll do is I'll go into resume and I will take it back to the start. I believe I can do that by...
Yep. Just hit mute on John if he comes up.
Oh, indeed.
Okay. Okay, so John Bissett, everyone would know from CBAA, gives an introduction. We then go on to, I think, Danny, you're next on screen, but we won't necessarily go to that.
No.
And then there's myself leading people through. But I guess the point of the videos is we've tried to make it interactive and useful for you to go through. And at every module, there are downloads for you to download useful resources, whether that be a plan to fill out what sort of risks in your particular area. There are activities to go through that risk. So, like we see, I'll stay on that page, Danny, first for me. You can...
Oh, is that the page you're after? I believe you've frozen up on me, Martin, or I've frozen up.
See the activity just for your local emergency management plan. Okay.
Sorry, you just froze up on me there for a second, Martin. Could you repeat what you said?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So this activity here, there's an activity in almost every module about this one is about identifying the local council emergency management plan. Go and have a look at the risks in your area. Download the template and fill in your natural disaster risk template to get people to think about what potentials there are for emergencies in your area and to get a bit of a risk profile. It's a bit like a risk management profile. So a download there, which will download.
Yep, that is downloading now. I can.
We'll just have one look at that, and then I think we'll come back to me.
No worries at all. I'll just stop sharing my screen and then share that one, which should be down the bottom. Where is it? So, there it is. Sorry, I've got too many screens open at the moment. There we go. That's showing up now, Martin. Oh, you're on mute at the moment.
Now I'm back. Thank you. So So this is one of the downloads, and really cleverly, the team at CBAA said, make it your own. Put your station logo in this thing, this is the first one in the first module, in the first sort of session about looking at the natural risks in your area. So we've got an example up there about what's happened in the last 10 years. Have we had floods? When was it? What was the impact of it? To make you sort of go through the process saying, oh yeah, we do have flooding. We do have bushfire risks, or we do have other things that can affect our area. And it gives you a political plan. Well, these are the sorts of things we're going to think about. The severe heat wave is interesting. If we just stop there on heat wave, I think someone could correct me later on, but I think more people die of heat wave in Australia than any other emergency. Might be a big call right now, but I'm pretty sure I've read and heard that somewhere. So it's not to be overlooked, and doesn't seem like the most dramatic, like bushfire or flood or something. But these things are the way we connect with our local communities. So we've sort of thrown in there for you to make your own judgments as to, or to maybe quiz the local emergency officers in your area using that local information to come up with a risk profile. Thanks, Danny.
No worries at all. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. So that's just a quick look at the courses. It's being launched today. Here's the address down the bottom for learning about the CBAAs and for enrolling in that learning platform. Really exciting, and done in partnership with the Judith Nielsen Institute for Media and Ideas, who've been great supporters of trying to get the skills level and the knowledge level out to community radio. So that's been terrific. Also, the CMTO's course has been launched as well after that earlier pilot that was done in August. Been a call out to stations, and I guess, Michaela, I don't think you mind if I put your email address up here, but they're on the lookout now. The applications are being now, expressions of interest are now open for getting the CMTO in-station course up and running too. The two courses can work together. And I'm suggesting that they could work like this, that you could go through the online course as a station and as a broadcaster, and then come together as a team event and run through the CMTO's course to really drill down on that plan and to make it really worthwhile, to get some practical outcomes. Because I don't think there's going to be accreditation or anything at the end of either of these courses if you just do them in isolation, but doing them both will give stations and broadcasters a really good understanding of where they want to be, and then start those conversations about, well, if we want to be over there, how do we get there?
Excellent. I've just brought up the CMTO website now because no screens were being shared at the moment. But Martin, if you want to share your screen, just feel free to grab control whenever you'd like. And also, I do have a few things here, a few questions and comments from the audience. Okay. Shall I start talking about those, Martin, or do you still need to discuss some more stuff?
Where are the questions in the Q&A?
There is stuff in the webinar chat. Bill from Plenty Valley FM and Nick from Alpine Radio, both talking about how, luckily enough, in Victoria, Emergency Management Victoria has memorandums of understanding with several community stations. Bill noted that Plenty Valley FM has just racked up 10 years as an emergency broadcaster under that MOU. Nick from Alpine Radio is just about to start to do a bit of training with all their presenters to make sure they're adhering to the MOU. So we very much hope that they'll be using the materials from both the CBAA website and the CMTO as part of that. I can't let this one go through to the keeper. John Hoskin says that you hold your age very well, Martin. So just wanted to let you know about that. Possibly as part of the post-conference materials that we send out, we might be able to find out what you moisturise with. In response to that about the Emergency Management Victoria, Peter Van Schaik makes the comment that 10 FM, which is in Tenterfield, got a very frosty reception from the local emergency management committee, because they are media, and he'd like to sort of know, how do they bridge that gap? Tenterfield was, of course, it's sort of up there around the New South Wales-Queensland border, and had a very, very difficult start to the year there with bushfires. But what sort of advice would you give to Peter from 10FM about sort of starting that relationship with local emergency management?
Yeah, it's a great question, Peter. Thanks. And here I am banging on about, go and approach your local emergency management committee. There might be a lower level down to actually do that. Now, just think that the early MC might be at a regional level. And of course, your media, I think that's a bit of a lame excuse for them to fob you off. But there might be something at a council level where you can start that discussion as well. I guess my essential answer is don't give up, because you've gone to one, or, you maybe gone to one and got, pushed away like that. But I think look at it from their point of view too, is what are you offering for them, and making that clear to emergency services, and what do you actually want from them. If it's just information to be helpful, the response I've got from 99% has been really positive. So maybe just think about how you've approached them, and is there other ways of getting to speak to someone? Because being fobbed off as media and maybe being fobbed off as community media, you don't care. That's not a widely held view that I've had. People do appreciate the fact that we can go be hyper local and be involved in that way. So my suggestion is give it a go, another go.
Excellent here. Now, Matthew, I'm sorry, I don't know what station you're from. If you want to let us know in the chat box, that'd be great. He states that the CFA, the Country Fire Association's Safer Together community engagement has lots of possibilities and examples around preparedness programming. So we'll look up for that document, and we might sort of include that in this as well. Nick Brown, again, sort of makes the comment, in Victoria, we don't broadcast any emergency warnings or advices unless they are from an official source. We need to confirm the emergency before broadcasting.
Yeah. Can I just talk to that just for a second?
That's a very important point.
Yeah, Nick, thanks for that question. We specifically looked at, we're not looking at official broadcasters, but we're looking at where people get their information from. So we have gone into some detail about how to treat social media posts in particular, and what responses there should be to social media. We can't deny that there'll be social media commentary, as we all know, during those times, but what do broadcasters do with them? We can use them for content, but we've got to use them in a very special way. So thanks for raising that. There are some tools and some tips and some really strong sort of, not so much regulation, but guidance on what to do with them in both the courses.
Matthew also notes that loving the risk assessment document there, but just sort of wanting to know about incorporating new risks, giving climate change the past 10 years is not necessarily indicative of what future risks and threats might be. And Bill backs that one up with, of course, don't forget the pandemic. So, I mean, you would assume that sort of the documentation that we have there has scope to evolve with the station's specific needs.
Absolutely. They're living documents, and they're there as templates for people to use as they see fit. I guess what we've tried to do is give some organisational structure to making the decision and going down the pathway of, where do you want to be? So I think the templates, the activities, the little quizzes at the end will really help shape stations to get where they want to be. And then the CMTO course of coming together and sort of analysing that together with a facilitator in the room and a local emergency services expert in the room as well for part of the course can really start you on the ball rolling. So back to Tenterfield, maybe we won't have such a frosty reception if there's a group of people making the approach to come along to an event should you run the course in Tenterfield.
Yeah, and Bill backs that one up as well. He sort of, as part of their engagement, he says they've been involved with 3 local councils for the 10 years that they've been an emergency broadcaster and participate in municipal emergency management planning committees. And that's strengthened their relationship with all emergency services and recovery agencies. And that is one of the things that we find with stations is that there's so many different emergency management departments that it can sometimes be a bit difficult to know where to start. But I guess it's just sort of like eating an elephant. You've got to do it one bite at a time.
And just to that, let's not forget that generally speaking, emergency services are pretty well set up in terms of their information flow for their own benefit, because they want the RFS, to talk to the SES, to talk to the police, to talk to the health system, during an emergency. They have whole systems for that. And they've already got existing systems for how to deal with and spread media inquiry and media information. So they know that. It's just about us knowing how to tap into that, so we do it effectively, professionally, so that it has a good outcome for them and for us, and really, at the end of the day, for the community. Should your community station want to go down this line of being more involved in community radio emergency broadcasting?
Excellent. I'm just going into some of the questions that we've got on our Facebook. Thanks so much for people getting involved there. Chance Hanlon from 2UU in Shoalhaven says the best place to get info in these different situations would go to the SES or Rural Fire Service, where you can access all their resources. They were forced to do that earlier in the year with the recent bushfires in Shoalhaven. Natalie Posdev asks, Martin, could you talk a bit about what role stations can play after an emergency?
Yes, great question, Natalie. Thank you. The recovery of communities after an emergency is, it's critical these days. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, and let's talk about another network just for a second, and that is ABC. And we're not trying to copy what ABC does. We're not trying to do exactly what they do, but just have a look and observe as a media member what they've done. They had special reporters on TV and radio and cross media simply doing recovery stories. And the reason for that is that the trauma of an emergency, during the bushfire, is one thing. But to have lost your house, or to not know where the services are, or to go through this traumatic thing, can last, well, the rest of the lifetime. But the worst thing is for people to be forgotten. And there's an opportunity for community radio so close to the community and part of the community to actually be involved in it, to help in that recovery. And it's not just about, it is partly about locating and providing information where services can be found, and assisting with that and holding decision makers to account through your local journalism, those sorts of things. But it's also, there's an opportunity for archiving the stories and allowing people to tell their stories so that they are heard and not just forgotten. After the fire goes through, there's the aftermath. We don't just go back to playing music. So if we're going to be great community radio stations that are connected to our communities, the before bit is really important. The after bit that we're talking about now is critical, because it's probably longer term, more impactful. And in the middle, there is during the broadcast. That's what people see as the exciting bit, but it's also the bit that just starts another road, and that is the road to recovery. The most important thing is that people aren't forgotten.
Excellent. All right, now, I don't know if I'm seeing any more questions coming through. I'll just go into the chat box now and see if I can see anything. Thanks very much, everyone, for jumping in today. And thanks for everyone who's sort of saying that they're going to be checking out the courses that we have available. Now, it was mentioned before, sort of the fact that with climate change and the like, that is going to make things a little bit difficult. That's why I'm very happy to say that our next CBAA webinar, which is going to be happening in exactly 1 week from now, is warming up climate reporting on community broadcasting. I haven't listed all of the panelists there because we've got a slew of intellectuals who are here and able to assist. A link to the registration for that session will be sent to you as part of the follow-up from this one, but it is there available on the CBAA website if you want to go there and check that out. That's warming up climate reporting on community broadcasting. So it is sort of one of those things that's very much working in conjunction with our reporting on emergency broadcasting and the like. Martin, I don't know if there's any more questions coming through. I'll see if I can get one last look at what's there in the chat box. I'll just stop my share, but just another quick reminder, the webinars will continue here, and that one is going to be a really fantastic session. So Martin, while you're, I'll just give you last chance to sort of cover anything that you might want to cover while I just run into Facebook quickly.
Yeah, sure. I'll just I just want to say thanks to a couple of people who've worked really hard on this behind the scenes, and I think it was in the CMTO. There's obviously Geordie, Helly, and Michaela who've really helped on putting that course together and been really supportive of trying to get it out to broadcasters, which is great. That's at the CMTO. And I know at the CBAA, John was really on top of it too, and Victoria was obviously working in the background there, and others who've been involved in, particularly all the broadcasters who came on to share their experience as part of the videos, and the experts. Otherwise, like, there's been a whole heap of people trying to pull together so that as a sector we can pull together to be better emergency broadcasters. So I just want to say thanks to them. And lastly, to that, I mentioned earlier the Judith Nielsen Institute for Media and Ideas, who are doing some great work, and this is probably up there in terms of their great work in my view when it comes to community media and their support for it.
Excellent. All right then. Well, I guess we will call. I'm just seeing one more thing coming through on the chat. I'll just check out what that is quickly before I bring things to an end. I've been Danny from the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. On behalf of the CBAA, I'd like to thank the Community Media Training Organisation for their support of today's webinar. Thanks to Michaela from the CMTO for all of her assistance with this webinar and all of the assistance that she provides me with all of our webinars. I would be lost without you, Michaela. And I'm not saying that lightly because, yeah, without you, I'd just be stuffed, mate. But I'm recording that at the moment. And thanks also to Martin Corben. Martin, not only for today's webinar, but also for his involvement in a whole gang of stuff we've been doing recently. Thanks for appearing at the CBAA conference. For those of you out there in the audience who didn't get to check out all of the content there at the CBAA conference, if you have registered, you will have been sent links to where you can go and catch up and watch those recordings. They are only available until the end of the month. So if there's anything that you missed at the conference that you wanted to go and check out, please feel free to go and have a look at that, follow that up. You will have been sent links to that from the CBAA email account. If you haven't been sent that and you're wanting to find out a bit more, you can send me a message, danny.chifley@cbaa.org.au. That's danny.chifley@cbaa.org.au. I'm going to put my email address there in the instant message box. You can pretty much send me anything if you want. Forward me jokes. That's what Dad does. But thank you very much to everyone. And also, in addition to thanking both Martin and Michaela, thank you all very much for attending today's session. Very much appreciated. We hope to be seeing you for next week's webinar, Warming Up. Climate reporting on community broadcasting. Registrations are available via the CBAA website now. I'll send through a link to how you can register in just a little while. Unless there's any final thoughts, I'm going to shut this thing down. Anything from anyone? Bueller? No, that's it. Everyone, enjoy your day. I look to be talking to you again very, very soon. Danny from the CBAA signing off. See you next time at a webinar near you.